compliance and sealing revenue leaks. And before we engage our panelists, let's take a look at the numbers which adopted the policy. And on the finance bill, what are some of the notable changes? Let's take a look. Well, those are some of the things that are notable, specifically that were moved from zero rated to tax exempt. There's production of medicines, transport services for sugarcane from farm to factory. Also, there's locally assembled mobile phones and electric bicycles, solar and lithium-ion batteries, animal feeds imports, as well as those are just some of the key areas that we'll be looking at that have been moved from zero rate to exempt. We'll talk about what tax exempt really means when it has been shifted from conversation. And because Finance Bill 2024 was thwarted, let's talk to the Gen Z, because they're the root cause of why this conversation, this Finance Bill 2024 was not revised, right? So Sophie, allow me to engage you. What really concerned you about the Finance Bill 2024?
Well, first of all, Linda, I would like to say that Gen Z is a mindset that the introduction of VAT on bread, and the introduction of VAT on bread, and really bread is like staple food for every morning for Kenyans. So those are some of the things that came out to show really that there's a lot that these people are coming for in terms of our paycheck, yet we're not really seeing what is being done with what has already been collected. Yes. And what is being done with what has already been collected. Yes.
And well, Gideon, you've interacted with the Finance Bill 2025-2026.
To mention about the Finance Bill of 2025, and I do believe even the CS acknowledge that the very final version of that bill has not yet been released. It's been sent by the National Treasury to Parliament. Parliament is yet to table it and to be released to the public. So there are various versions of the finance bill that are going around.
Which one have you interacted with? Do you have the latest one?
So when you say latest, so there's there's one that I believe is the one that was tabled in Parliament. But what I do say is we await the final version to be tabled in Parliament, and then that is the one that will undergo public participation. But then back to your question is there are quite a number of changes. Maybe in terms of my opening remarks first is that whereas from the policymakers, you've heard that this finance bill is not about increasing taxes. So yes, whereas it's not about increasing taxes, but we've seen more of a policy document that is geared towards revenue curbing tax expenditure and really focusing on tax leakages. So whereas it's not really focused on in terms of raising new taxes, but then in terms of the existing taxes, how is the government rationalizing this one? So the current, the finance bill that is that I believe has been tabled in Parliament is more or less about rationalizing expenditure. And when you rationalize expenditure, you are tightening the noose in terms of their tax leakages, then you can get more. Now back to the question on the digital tax. So yes, the digital tax is currently at 3%, but now the bill proposes 1.5%. So I believe there's been outcry there in terms of digital transaction, that a majority of Kenyans are now on the internet. Our internet literacy levels are over 80% as a country. So, and most of the youth are now on online businesses. So yes, part of the drive to reduce that, as I believe, is part of the Gen Z's uprising, but then it's part of the broader policy by the government to try and reduce the taxes, and then you'll have more in the tax bracket.
It's more like calming the Gen Z's first. The priorities are majorly on the things that will not infuriate them. We'll talk about the priorities for the government for some of the priority areas that they really featured on the Finance Bill 2025. But on the other side, we have Bentura Kwamboka, who's going to give us some feedback. Remember, we are live on K24 TV as well as Kameme TV. Bentura, what do you have for us?
As we continue this discussion on the People's Dialogue, we are just unpacking the Finance Bill 2025-2026. And I'll be with you on the feedback session just to get to know what people are saying about this particular finance bill. Remember, the 2024-2025 finance bill had brought a bit of issues here and there, and it was suspended. But I'll be taking you through the comments on our social media pages. Remember to send in your feedback at K24TV across all our social media pages. And before I return it back to you, Linda, we have our question for the day, whereby we are asking you what concerns you most about the 2025-2026 finance bill. What concerns you most about the 2025-2026 finance bill? We would like to hear what are your thoughts about this particular finance bill. Remember, they have said it's one of the lean finance bills that we've had in years. But I'll take you back to studio where Linda is currently with a panel of guests just to unpack this finance bill 2025-2026. Linda.
So let me the issues are being, some of the products are being moved from zero weight to exempt. What do you make of these priority areas, especially for the government? Does it feature on what really Kenyans want?
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be here and accompanied by my colleague Neema. Allow me just to do two things. First of all, just to unpack something that we are talking about the finance bill almost like the omnibus of budget. But budget has two sides. What has been tabled in Parliament, and we expect to be able to see it very soon, is both measures of expenditure and revenue measures. Actually, it's called estimates of revenue and expenditure. Now, finance bill as a piece of law that is actually coming to Parliament only makes recommendations and amendments on extra tax measures that are going to be. What does it do? It's an omnibus, just to say that it amends other laws that exist. So there is no law called finance bill per se. So what it does is that it recommends changes in income tax law. It recommends changes in the excise duty law, in the VAT Act, and the like. But what is it for? It is to do two things. One is to provide government with an opportunity to raise new revenue. And when we talk about new revenue, in this year, the government is expecting to raise about an extra 320 billion, according to our target, to the targets. So in other words, if you were to bring that down, say, the government was, had 2,000 shillings, they expect to have 2,300 shillings. So that is the additional measures. But from what the CS said yesterday, is that the finance bill they are working on, as Gideon said, we have not seen the final version. It is neither on the website of Treasury, neither on the website of Parliament. And for the organization I work with, we only comment on the officially published document. We have seen documents doing their laps, but we don't know which one is correct until my suspicion is that, based on the cabinet memo last week, there are a couple of things they are doing. But the second thing the finance bill does is that it tries to make the environment for doing business easier by recommending administrative measures that are supposed either to ease collection of taxes, perhaps net more people into it. For instance, one of the key things that is doing rounds is about the Nairobi International Financial Center and how that can be more attractive, given that we are competing with other countries like, Dubai, other cities like Dubai, Rwanda, and other places where. So that's one thing. But then there's an expenditure side, which I think should also worry us, because remember, these finance measures, these revenue measures are supposed to help us, be able to finance. What we see from the 2024, you remember the finance bill did not go through, and the measures, but remember the income tax that was still there was already in operation. The VAT Act that was there was still continued to be in operation. So some of the things that we expect, and I say this, we expect, even based on what we are reading, is a big part of it is actually easing the cost of doing business. Because the cost of doing business has become very high. You know, and you have a lot of work that has been going on, government talking about ensuring that there is no double taxation on certain aspects, that the taxation that is done, that VAT, for instance, the way VAT exemptions are made is actually in a fair way, so that all people benefit. We've had concerns that the benefit is not necessarily being fair, you know, to who benefits, for instance, from the special economic zones, from the export processing zones. And so those are some of the things I really wanted.
But you know, judging from what you've told me, majorly it's to reduce the cost of living. And when we look at the expenditure side, where the government has collected an X amount with the wages and with the allocations given to various sectors, that means that major priorities will be on the cost of living. And what happens really to other sectors of the economy? That means there will be a slug in economic building.
So, and that's concerning because you're right, and I'll be passing to Neema in a minute, just to say about some of the things we are observing in the sectoral allocations. But you see, employment creation, incomes, is what drives an economy. If there are no jobs, and what we are observing, for instance, with the economic survey that I was just released, it almost indicates that there is a dip in private sector job creation. The sectors that seems to be growing are public sector driven kind of growth, and you know what is driving that kind of growth. Of course, you invest in infrastructure, but government as we know it is not the one that drives economic growth, because it's private sector. You know, it's businesses that when they are performing and the like. Investments in the manufacturing sector is a big area. And when you look at manufacturing sector and agriculture sector, actually they are lagging. The leading sector actually is financial services. And financial services, a big part of financial services is the fact that a lot of the financial institutions are actually lending to government through our domestic market, because our deficit is also significant. But I mean, I think I can pass it to Neema to speak about some of the priority areas.
Yeah, we can pass it to Neema to just tell us what are some of the priority areas that you've identified as well. Neema is Neema Wangui, Bajeti Hub Program, Support Capacity Building and Learning. Karibu Neema.
Asante sana. And I really like the starting point to which Dr. Abraham has started, to understand that this is a process first. We cannot isolate the finance bill as an independent paper that is standing by itself. And with that, to understand priorities, I think it's important for us to take that step back and to understand that we have revenue plus expenditure for us to get service delivery. Most of the time when we're talking about taxes and the numbers, we get caught up and we miss the fact that they're not just numbers, they translate to service delivery at the end of the day. So I would like to just take us through maybe the education sector, and we can look at more examples as we go on. So when we look at budget estimates, finance bill, when we take a step back, we're looking at the budget policy statement that just came out. And it's giving us the ceilings and it's giving us the priorities. So in education, some of the priorities that really stood out is in the State Department of Higher Education, we had HELB, which is for the students that are learning in universities. Then we also had the school feeding program and CBC, which is an upcoming conversation on how we can implement it effectively, especially in public schools. Now, the BPS gave us the perspective of the priorities. Now, when we get into the budget estimates, the finance bill, now we're looking at, are we going to finance these priorities? Because we cannot state something as a priority, but then we don't allocate for it. So given
is it over ambitious? Do you find it ambitious?
Well, sometimes we do see that, and that's why it's important for you to engage with the entire process. Because then once you engage with the BPS, then you engage the budget estimates, you're able to tell, was this an over-ambitious priority? So now let me give you an example. For example, health was a great priority when it came to the BPS. Now the budget estimates are out, and we can see that the State Department for Higher Education has an increase in the budget by 8.5 billion. When you trickle down to the budget lines, we can be able to see that HELP has an increase of 5 billion in allocation. So we can see that that is matching. It is a priority when it comes to allocation. But on the other end, where we can talk about, okay, so are we being ambitious in our priorities that we're talking about? We are talking about CBC implementation. When it comes to CBC, we're talking about teachers. Teachers need to be trained. Teachers need to be employed. We're talking about infrastructure, especially because CBC is very centered on the kind of infrastructure that is there in our schools. But then when we come into the allocations that are given, we're seeing a slash in the school feeding program by about 600 million. Then that questions, do we really prioritize? Are we really prioritizing school feeding program?
Yes.
Then in school infrastructure, especially at primary and secondary school, we're seeing cuts for up to 700 million. Then that again begs the question, are we really prioritizing our children and what we're stating in the BPS?
Yet education is a pertinent sector in the
Yes,
economy.
a very key sector when it comes to delivering services. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Nema. Perhaps I can throw this back to you, Sophie. In regards to, we are talking about the finance bill, but well, do really Gen Zs understand, even the tax collection measures, why we're doing this? Do they have that sort of understanding from where you sit? Or they just pick some of the areas that they feel they have been infringed, and once that is sorted, they don't want to know what other areas are in the finance bill?
I think it's a yes or no question, because yes, because of course, you know, people somehow thrive on negativity to a level extent. But no, because if we have a culture of seeing money collected and money put to good use, then you will find that we will be more accepting of what is brought to the table. But now we are seeing a culture where money is collected, but money is embezzled. There is budgeted corruption from the word go. Even before the monies are dispersed, the corruption is already budgeted for. So me personally, as a Gen Z, I kind of have a block in my mind, because I already know no matter what you put in place in terms of more collection, more revenue, it just means more stealing. It doesn't mean more service delivery. Nema has just said the numbers should translate to service delivery. But now we're seeing numbers and absolutely no service delivery. In fact, if you look since 2022 up to now, I'd really like to see what new developments have happened in this country courtesy of tax collection. As a Gen Z, I think there is nothing that has shown impact of what has been collected in the past 2.5 years. Yes.
You can see substantial developmental projects that really can reflect on what has been put in and the implementation. So implementation is a key problem.
It's key because if you reduce the cost of living and if you increase my capacity to make more income, then I don't think I'll have a problem providing the government with more to offer me more services. Just a short example, if the money collected would offer me less money to pay in school for my child or less money to pay for healthcare, I wouldn't see a problem in giving the government that money. But now I'm giving you that money, but I can't take my child to a public school because infrastructure and services at a public school are not good. So I end up paying more money for school, more money for healthcare, yet I'm still paying taxes.
Wow, pertinent issues right there. Budget and corruption, Gen Zs have said. But well, we are not alone. Studio B is also on standby, and we have another panel together with Mumbi Chege on the other side. Mumbi, what do you have for us?
Indeed. Thank you so much, Linda Koske on the other side. And tonight, all eyes turn to the 2025 finance bill, and Kenya is holding its breath, packed with sweeping changes, tighter tax nets, and fresh controversy. Now, as the government insists it's a bold step to plug revenue gaps, millions of Kenyans are already voicing concerns, calling the bill out of touch with the daily realities. As the cost of living bites harder, is this a path to economic recovery or just more weight on weary shoulders? Is there still hope for Kenyans? To help us break it down on this side, with me tonight is Odhiambo Ramogi. Thank you so much. On my left, who is an economist and the CEO of Elim Capital Limited. Thank you so much, Mr. Odhiambo, for being with us tonight. We also have Reverend Gadhangi Waiguru from Charismatic Church. Asante sana and karibu sana. We also have James Njogu, who is the head of tax, Britam. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being here. Let's start with you, Mr. Othiambo. We have heard, Gen Z's understanding of Finance Bill 2025. What's your understanding of Finance Bill 2025?
Oh, thank you. Well, first of all, you found me correcting Linda, the question that she asked as to whether the Gen Zs understand the finance bill or not. And I didn't like that question. I shared as much. Because it casts aspersions on their understanding of the finance bill, as if it has been in doubt. The same aspersions are not being cast on my mother as to whether my mother understands the finance bill or not. And purely on account of her age, I think the question should be, what's your understanding as the Gen Z of the finance bill? Because then that question presupposes that they have an understanding and only wants to divulge their understanding of the same. What's my understanding of the finance bill? Well, if you look at the Finance Bill 2025, it's milder than what we had in 2024. What we had in 2024 was on your face, it was bold, it was arrogant, and it was very insensitive to where Kenyans were, because it sought to increase taxes even on sensitive areas, but at the same time there were sections of it that seemed to tax not just your income but also your wealth. 2025 is not increasing tax rates. It looks like they are more keen on increasing the tax base. And when they say they're increasing the tax base, what we are looking at essentially is to fill in the gaps so that there are no longer loopholes in their tax collections. According to a report, I think that was presented by Treasury, about 400 billion shillings is lost purely on account of tax exemptions. And so they wanted to seal those loops and ensure that those losses are minimized. I think one of the things also that Finance Bill 2025 seeks to do is to remove the power of tax exemption from the Cabinet Secretary and shift it to Parliament. I think it's a very bold move in the right direction. I'm not giving a vote of confidence on Parliament as it is. I am simply saying it is better to have the institution of Parliament to handle that as opposed to the Cabinet Secretary. And so the decisions they have made to not increase the rates is the decision in the right direction. And now you're looking at me like I need to finish. Let me finish by saying this. It's a tight balance. It's a tight balance because on one hand, 70% of our revenue goes towards debt repayment. Right. What you remain with, 30%, you probably want to balance that out with the recurrent expenditure. And so now that's why you're finding that our capital expenditure, at least according to Treasury's accounting, has always been a lot lower than the recurrent expenditure. Because what remains is a lot lower, is a lot smaller rather. And so you want to make sure that one, the tax you are receiving does not reduce in the amount, and two, you want to ensure to find ways of how can you boost that revenue so that then you can have more room to wriggle, either to borrow or even to offer government services. Okay. And so I think the Cabinet Secretary has really tried to do his balancing act here and there. We are hopeful, yes, right. But I think the rain started beating us a lot earlier.
Let's get Reverend Waiguru's sentiments. Is there anything positive, according to you, in this finance bill?
Thank you very much. I would say going through, first of all, for me, I ask myself, and I want to give an example. If you see some fruits are rotting and you just want to have good fruits, do you just go and pluck them? But even the others will still come that are rotten. So you have to check where is the cause of the problem, where maybe it's in the roots. So for me, I would say we saw what happened in the previous finance bill, and even what our expert has shared is that the MPs, the parliament, is trying to show the young people and show Kenyans that we care for you. But are they really following the rule? If it had not happened like it happened last year, would they still be saying, no, we don't want to increase taxes?
Yeah.
So that's why, for me, I think it's more than just creating a finance bill. In the other panel, we had them talking about the budget proposals and how is that process? Because I've been in several forums where people are discussing about the process of making the finance bill. And in that process, Kenyans come just to hear it is the finance bill is here.
Right.
Let us go and vote. But we have not even asked ourselves, has the process been the right one? Because first of all, we ask ourselves, how rich is our country? What do we have? And then how should we budget these resources that we have? And then when we come to the making of the budget, we ask ourselves, which percentage goes to production and which one goes to consumption?
Okay.
I heard it also in the other previous panel, they were talking about education.
Right.
For me, I feel when you see education being given a very big percentage, which is good, as we are saying, we need educated people, but we also ask ourselves, what is the returns? After all these people have gone to school,
Okay.
We have so many people graduating, and then they go back to just in the
Right.
village.
Okay.
There are no jobs. So for me, I would think for a finance bill, for such a budget to be to take Kenya ahead, we need to see much budget going to production, not consumption.
All right, let's get Mr. Njogu in on this, because I feel like there's a lot of confusion. Some Kenyans might not understand clearly. Finance Bill 2024 did not pass. So what has Kenya been operating on or under?
Thank you very much. The Finance Bill 2024, if you look, it was a precursor or sort of a turning point on the previous 2023,
Right.
where the new government have already established and they set a tone that they are going to be very harsh on taxes. So what happened is that in 2023, if you notice, there was a lot of litigation. It seemed as if it didn't work. So then 2024, it came hard on proposing many harsh or sort of very drastic changes that people could not contain anymore, and they felt the government is not fearing them. So what they did, they looted, and that thing dropped away. Now, if you look at the 2024 now and 2025, the changes or the proposals are not as drastic as it was in 2024. It is a bit milder, as our my colleague have mentioned here. So that milder is the government is trying to balance between, do we go hard on the citizen or do we go indirect? If I look at the budget for FY 2025, they have gone more of indirect by reducing the list on zero rating to vatable, and also reducing the list of exempt to standard rated. Quite a number of things have gone to standard rated, and other things have gone from zero rated to exempt. That means that the refund that the government used to give, they want to curtail it. They preserve a lot of money. Rather than giving the businesses the refund, they ring-fence it and use it for their own maybe expenditure. How effective it is, it's a doubt, because normally the cost will go up because the manufacturer are not able to claim the input tax. As such, the cost that ordinarily could have obtained as a refund is then passed on to the consumer.
Right, and I would like Mr. Odhiambo to get in on this. We were just talking about that, and Linda also mentioned that on her side. What does that mean for the normal Wananchi? We have things that have, products have been moved from being zero rated to tax exempt. For instance, raw materials for making animal feeds, you know, transportation for things like sugarcane, you know. So what does that mean? Who bears the cost? Does it go back to, you know, the end consumer, as Mr. Njogu just mentioned?
Well, more often than not, that is what happens.
And as you explained that, we really want to understand that difference. Kenyans need to understand that, because you see, that tax is not so direct,
Right.
but those are the loopholes you really want to get down to.
Yeah. There is what we call, you know, zero rated, and then there is what we call exempt.
Right.
When the government tells you that the product you're offering in the market, say sanitary towels, for example, that's an example, is zero rated. What they simply means is that the sanitary towel that you're selling will not attract any taxes. On top of that, any inputs you used in making the sanitary towel, and you happened to pay VAT, that VAT is refundable to you. So it's not just the product that you're offering in the market that enjoys tax-free access to the market. It's also the input that you used in providing that product to the market. Now, that's zero rated. Tax exempt, on the other hand, simply means the product itself can access the market at no taxes. However, the inputs you used in developing or producing that product, you will still need to pay taxes for that. And these inputs could be in form of services rendered, in form of raw materials. It could be a wide array of inputs. Now, what the government has done in many instances is it has moved the tax from being zero rated to exempt. So yes, your product will still access the market at no tax, but all the inputs you used in developing or producing that product will attract the taxes. Now, in principle, this means therefore that the cost of producing your product has simply gone up by about 16%.
Right.
Because now all those inputs that you are to pay, you will pay 16% for all of them. Now, if, for example, raw materials form about 50% of your production costs, that's already 8% additional cost to the product. So you ask yourself, in this high tax economy, where you're already paying a lot of taxes, and the market is also lean, because Kenyans do not have disposable income. So if you said you're going to absorb this cost, how sustainable is that? And the answer is it's not. So you have to pass that cost on to Mwananchi and say, I am sure you understand that this thing is no longer zero rated, is tax exempt. So yes, we will see a lot of the items that you're mentioning, like, you know, animal feeds, go up by, say, 8% to 12%, simply capturing that, that difference.
Right. Let's come to you, Reverend Waiguru.
Yes.
With this whole finance bill talk and everything, a lot of Kenyans are asking themselves, is it possible for Kenya to survive without an annual amendment finance bill every single year? Is it possible? Is it doable?
Yes, it's doable, and I can say we have already had have an experience, because even currently, do we know the kind of finance bill we are using?
Right.
Yes, I can hear from the conversation that yeah, when the president did not sign the 2024, then it was presumed we continued with the 2023.
Yeah.
But as time has been moving, we have been seeing some of the things that were not were being rejected coming in from the back door. So that's why for me, I think as we have had, it's about the systems and the goodwill of the executive, like the president that we have. We have had so many people saying, I also had in the conversation before the news, somebody saying how the president going around the country, giving, launching projects and all this, and even giving just cash.
All right.
So
let me just cut you short.
Yes.
Let's take a short break. We'll be back with more on this conversation. We're tackling the Finance Bill 2025 here on Kameme TV as well as K24. Don't go anywhere.
Muthegi wa ruriri.
Kabla nichukue simu yako, wacha nikwambie. Ile mawe ambayo ilikataliwa na wajenzi, nimeipata leo. Nimeenda kuuma dengu. Wow!